Hello, everyone. This is Jeffrey here. I'm here today with Alex Meyer to discuss our predictions for the Oscars, which take place tomorrow night. We'll be going through all 24 categories just as they'll be presented on the telecast. None of them will be shifted to the commercials. Thank goodness for that.
Amen. Yeah. I can understand in some awards, like with the Emmys and the Grammys, shifting some off air because there's just way too many. But with the Oscars, with 24 categories, they all deserve their moment in the spotlight.
Exactly. And it just seems ridiculous.
Three hours minimum be damned. It's the Oscars. Let it go on. I mean, obviously don't make it too long, but it's like the Super Bowl. Let it go on as long as it needs to.
I agree. And so let's get on with our predictions, starting with the biggest one of all, and probably a difficult one this year, definitely, and that's Best Picture. So, Alex, start off by reading off the nominees.
All right, so there can be anywhere from 5 to 10 nominees based on how many films get first place votes. And there are 8 nominees this year, and they are Black Panther, Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Favorite, Green Book, Roma, A Star is Born, and Vice.
Okay, this Best Picture this year has been very difficult to predict because, look, so many films have been winning different precursors. Like Black Panther won the SAG Ensemble, Bohemian Rhapsody won the Golden Globe for drama, Green Book won the Golden Globe for comedy musical and the PGA. Meanwhile, the presumed frontrunner Roma has wins from Critics' Choice, DGA, and BAFTA. So, where do you stand? Who do you have out front, or what do you have out front? I should say.
I'm going with Roma because it seems to be the least controversial of some of the nominees this year. As we saw last year, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri couldn't overcome the accusations of things like racism as well as lack of nominations for, say, Martin McDonagh in the Best Director category, and I think some accusations of either things with the movies or things involving people involved with those movies in some of the other contenders will hurt their chances here. And I know some have criticized Roma for some don't like it because it's a Netflix movie and some feel it's too slow. But I think just a lot of people, I think overall, will throw their support behind it, especially maybe more younger and more foreign voters will probably want to throw their support behind it. And just given the overall praise it's gotten, I think it's going and given that and given that its worst accusations have been that it might be boring for some, I think that can help put it over the line a little.
Well, how exactly could the accusations of it being boring help?
Well, I never meant it. I never meant that it could help. I'm just saying that could. It seems that's the least likely. The accusations of it being boring are the least likely to hurt it in terms of winning Best Picture, I think. Whereas the other movies like Green Book and Bohemian Rhapsody and things like that have much more strong criticisms against them that could cause them to be ranked at the bottom of the preferential ballots for some voters. Whereas Roma, I can see being a lot of voters number one, number two, number three, which is which is the big thing that's needed to win this category of not just how many number one votes you get, but how many number two or number three votes.
Well, yes, and in fact, we should say that GoldDerby.com, as well as Scott Feinberg from the Hollywood Reporter, have been posting anonymous Oscar ballots from members they've interviewed. And yeah, there were at least a couple that thought Roma was not only boring, but thought it didn't really have much of a plot at all.
Yeah, well, with the anonymous ballots, the only way you can truly decide what may be a strong winner is if, like, say, you see one person being named in nearly every ballot of the voters picked to win. So even if like some voters might have found Roma boring, we have to remember this is only a very, very tiny, like 0.1% view of the Academy from these ballots. So unless like all of them, like say they voted for a certain person or certain movie, then we can't really take criticisms with like as the strong indicator that that movie will lose. So like for instance, like if like I remember a few years ago, there were like 10 anonymous voter ballots on the Hollywood Reporter. And for Best Picture, like maybe only two or three of them picked 12 Years a Slave to win in the Best Picture category, but still ended up winning. And so, therefore, I think with Best Picture, given that we've seen a wide variety of responses so far, just that the fact that Roma seems the least controversial overall gives me the feeling that it may edge out the rest of the competition.
Okay, you make some good points, and yes, I agree that when it comes to hearing, well, reading the anonymous Oscar ballots, it's important to take everything they say with a grain of salt. Though, with that being said, I'm going out on a limb and predicting Black Klansman to win Best Picture.
That would be my personal choice to win, but of course, we have to not let our personal bias get too in the way of these predictions. But I mean, it depends on. But we've never really seen Spike Lee's films be strong contenders before, so that we don't really have much of a bellwether to go against in terms of it winning. But I would personally like to see it win. But I just think that Roma, it's been so talked about and how it was shot and what it displays, that I just think that'll kind of help. And the fact that it's a strong lock to win, like Best Director and Cinematography, those types of awards can really help put a film over the Best Picture line. So,
Well,
um,
except those are voted on by separate voting unit from Best Picture.
well, yeah, it's still all the same people voting. It's just different types of ballots. We should just make that clear. It's not like one group votes for one award and another group votes for another. Like every other award is just simple first past the post of whoever has the most votes wins. Whereas this is, the preferential ranking. Um, yeah, but as for my overall rankings,
Wait, before you get to that, I do want to get into my reasons why I'm predicting Black Klansman. And I'm not predicting it because I want to see it when I actually feel I have good enough evidence to back me up. And no, it's probably the only film in the Best Picture lineup that got every single important nomination it needs. Not only writing, directing, and editing, but also the SAG Ensemble. Because let's keep in mind that Roma missed an editing nomination, and it can be hard to win Best Picture without an editing nomination. I mean, Birdman overcame that stat 4 years ago, but before that, you have to go all the way back to 1980 when Ordinary People won Best Picture without an editing nomination. Not to mention that Roma was completely ignored by SAG, and that's an awards group that showed a lot of love to Netflix in the past. And now, while yes, we did see The Shape of Water overcome the stat of no SAG Ensemble nomination last year, it still at least had individual nominations for Sally Hawkins and Richard Jenkins.
true, but with SAG, we have to remember that there's like 150,000 voters and only a small panel every year determines the nominations, whereas the Academy, all 8,000 members get to vote in the pre-nomination process, at least in the branches that their category represents, and then the final round, all members of all categories get to vote. And also, given the fact that the Academy has made strong efforts in the past couple years to really diversify their membership in terms of women, people of color, foreign voters, we may really be on a trend here where all the old rules of the past could probably continue to be broken in the next couple of years. And as the Guild Awards have proven this year, the everything has kind of gone off the rails in terms of what we thought was going to be winning in all the precursor prizes. So at this point, it's kind of like blindly throwing a dart at a dartboard and just hoping it hits the bullseye, which is kind of how I've approached this in terms of looking at what we've had so far and what old voters versus new voters want to see, and just what the guilds have been saying so far, and just everything going on politically, socially, because politics and social issues, I think, do influence votes for some people, so I try to kind of keep all of that in mind when making my predictions. So, I think what I think could help Roma over Black Klansman. I mean, Black Klansman could certainly help in the fact that the ending in particular served to be a direct criticism of the Trump administration per se, whereas Roma could be even more helpful because it's set in Mexico. And of course, Donald Trump, we know, hates Mexico and wants to build a wall on the border, which has been the cause of this recent government shutdown, the longest in US history. And if voters really want to get political and give Trump the middle finger, my instinct tells me they're going to vote for this.
We shall see, and it's also worth noting that Romo still have to overcome the fact that it's a foreign language film, and I could see some voters probably feeling they'll already have that taken care of in foreign language film, which we'll get to soon. Don't worry. As well as the fact that there probably is still the backlash of awarding a Netflix film Best Picture, whereas there's probably industry people who aren't ready to really see. Well, they just don't want to see the movie going experience relocated to just watching at home.
Mm. Well, but Roma if also some did its best to really roll out theatrical screenings where it could, and I think if any voter did see it theatrically, I wouldn't be surprised if, because I heard the theatrical experience of seeing Roma was quite incredible. So if any voter did see it on the big screen, I can imagine them wanting to rally behind it. And we've gradually seen the Oscars get more and more accepting of Netflix movies each year. Like with last year, we saw Mudbound break into the race with 4 nominations, including an acting nomination and a screenplay nomination. So that's pretty huge. So to go from 4 nominations for a Netflix film to 10, that really, to me, is a big sign that the industry really, for the most part, is embracing Netflix as a major player in the Oscar race. So I think, will there be some Netflix backlash? Yes, but I suspect that's just going to be the small minority group who wants to scream the loudest because we got, you know, um, but I guess should we get into overall rankings?
Um, sure, go ahead.
Because otherwise we'll just be talking best picture for like 2 hours. So the rest of my rankings are Roman first, and then I, just because there's been a lot of people trying to defend this movie, especially in the ballots, and because of its PGA and Golden Globe win, I'm putting Green Book in second place, followed by Black Klansman. Maybe this will be for Spike Lee what The Departed was for Martin Scorsese, and we know that, and Spike Lee, and I make that comparison because the two of them have been great friends for many years now.
And they're both native New Yorkers.
And I know Scorsese himself has shown great support for Black Klansmen.
Imagine he voted for it.
Yeah, and Then I have Black Panther in fourth because of its SAG win, and we do see some industry members throwing their support behind it in these anonymous ballots. Then I have The Favorite, followed by Bohemian Rhapsody, and then A Star Is Born and Vice.
Okay, I based my predicted rankings on the overall kind of support they have. So obviously Black Klansman, Roma, The Favorite, Green Book, A Star Is Born, Black Panther, Vice, and Bohemian Rhapsody are my overall rankings.
Mm-hmm. I originally would have put Bohemian Rhapsody last, but I don't know. I mean, if voters do pay attention to the Golden Globes and things like that, and some of them I'm willing to bet maybe really would have liked I'm willing some of them probably really did like Bohemian Rhapsody, considering it did get in Best Picture, considering its mixed critical response, and maybe there are some of them who feel the need to vote for it to kind of give it some acclaim in the wake of Bryan Singer getting fired and everything. I could see maybe that happening, or if they're just huge fans of Queen,
Yeah, but it does not have directing nomination, which was never going to happen. It also does not have a writing nomination.
No, and that's why I have it ranked as low as it is, because I don't. If it does somehow win Best Picture, it'll probably be one of the most shocking Oscar wins ever.
Probably even more shocking than when Crash beats Brokeback Mountain.
And of course, that did have the necessary nominations to win, like writing and directing.
And editing, which Brokeback Mountain did not have.
Yeah.
Are you ready to talk about Best Director?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now on to Best Director. And so the nominees are Spike Lee, Black Klansman, Powell Pawlikowski, Cold War, Yorgos Lanthimos, The Favorite, Alfonso Cuarón, Roma, and Adam McKay, Vice, and this seems pretty much to be a done deal for Alfonso Cuarón.
Yeah, I have a super bet here, so I'm easily picking him to win. And
Yeah.
then the rest of my rankings are Spike Lee, Yorgos Lanthimos, Adam McKay, and Powell Polakowski.
Exact same 5 rankings as me.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, Cuarón, after pulling off such a big technical achievement 5 years ago with Gravity, he makes a smaller, more personal film with Roma. Not to mention that he also produced, wrote, shot, and edited the film as well. And
hmm And history has shown sometimes that like when voters really like the way a film was made, and if the filmmaker was involved in multiple aspects, they'll often reward them by giving them multiple Oscars in one night, like we saw with Francis Ford Coppola for The Godfather Part 2, James Cameron for Titanic, and Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu for Birdman. All three of them won 3 Oscars in one night for those films, and Cuarón could probably beat them all with 4 wins if he should win if Roma should win all the categories that we think will win.
well, well, at least the categories Cuarón himself is nominated in because with Best Foreign Language Film, while the filmmakers are the ones who accept the award, it's really given to the country, not the filmmakers.
No, but I bet the filmmakers probably keep the Oscar statuette nonetheless.
Oh, that's a good point, but still, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
reason why Ang Lee is only credited as a two-time Oscar winner for directing Brokeback Mountain and Life of Pi. He does, even though he accepted foreign language film for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and came very close to winning had Steven Soderbergh not pull a Search for Traffic at the last minute.
Yeah, or but he probably keeps all three of the Oscar statues in his home, though, I imagine.
Well, that's probably true. So
Yeah,
now on to ready to talk about Best Actor?
sure.
Okay, so the nominees for Best Actor are.
All right, we have Christian Bale, Vice, Bradley Cooper, A Star Is Born, Willem Dafoe, At Eternity's Gate, Rami Malek, Bohemian Rhapsody, and Viggo Mortensen, Green Book.
And so early on in the season, it looked like this race was going to be between Christian Bale and Bradley Cooper, yet Rami Malek has been doing much better than expected. I mean, he's won the Golden Globe for Drama Actor, the SAG Award, and the BAFTA for his performance as Freddie Mercury. Even those who did not like the film still felt he was the best thing about it.
And I guess he might also be getting some sympathy votes due to the Bryan Singer situation and how they didn't get along on set. But then that might lead some to wonder if rewarding him for working with Bryan Singer is ethical or not. Because there's a debate of should the people involved with Bohemian Rhapsody be punished for Bryan Singer's sins or not.
Well, yeah, especially when they literally did nothing wrong.
Right, but some people may feel the association with him still makes it them undeserving to win, and that it might be an insult to to Bryan Singer's victims if any of them win. But I mean, this is just what people are saying, not my own opinion on the matter.
Well, yes, because as you said, it's important to leave your personal opinions on the nominees out of the equation and just focus on what it really seems likely to happen.
Yeah. Well, admittedly, I'm not personally rooting for Bohemian Rhapsody to win in anything just because there are other nominees that I think are better. But I'll admit, personally, I'm always torn. I am personally torn about whether or not people associated with a controversial director, even if they claim to have no knowledge about that person's behavior, I'm personally mixed as to whether or not they too should be punished along with Bryan Singer. I mean, a part of me says yes because maybe some of them knew about it beforehand, like maybe John Ottman, the editor, who's worked with Bryan Singer for decades, maybe he had heard rumors of the allegations. But then again, of course, I don't necessarily think obviously guessing they weren't involved in Bryan Singer's personal life, so that can kind of help separate it. I'm always torn between the whole separating the art from the artist because I can see some situations where yes, it should be separate, and other times where it shouldn't. It's like a case by case scenario.
Well, in any case, my overall predicted rankings are Rami Malek, Christian Bale, Bradley Cooper, Viggo Mortensen, and Willem Dafoe.
Yep, those are my same 5 rankings as well. I think Rami Malek may win, if like since Bohemian Rhapsody does seem to be the rare film that Hollywood has seemed to embrace way more than critics did. But maybe there's a possibility of a Christian Bale upset, considering how his performance as Dick Cheney in Vice was quite the transformation, and if some voters maybe could be upset with Rami Malek for not actually doing a lot of his own singing as Freddie Mercury, because a lot of it was lip syncing to the real.
Yeah, that pretty much hurts Audrey Hepburn from even getting nominated for My Fair Lady.
Yeah, and it probably costs, even though Deborah Carr was nominated for The King and I, she didn't win because her vocals were also dubbed by Marnie Nixon.
Yes, but we don't know how much common knowledge it was back then, especially given there was no internet.
Yeah, but I imagine some in the industry probably had to have known that it wasn't really her singing.
Well, yeah, well, yes, and
And maybe, but then again, I guess, yeah, well, we'll see what happens. I think it's ultimately a Rami Malek Christian Bale race. But yeah, I have all the same rankings as you did, although if Willem Dafoe were somehow to pull an out of nowhere shocking win, that would make me happy though, because he's my personal pick to win if I were my voting myself.
fair enough. And I should also point out that a thing Rami would have in common with Eddie Redmayne and Gary Oldman is that they all won Best Actor for playing real people in biographical films scripted by Anthony McCartan.
And Rami Malek would actually join Eddie Redmayne among the 10 youngest winners of Best Actor, because I believe he's only like 36, I believe, or maybe 37. I know he's in his mid 30s, and Eddie Redmayne was in his like early to mid 30s when he won. So,
Rami Malek is 37.
okay, yeah. Yeah, and I know for sure that a lot of the youngest actor winners are in their 30s, because I know the youngest winner to date, Adrian Brody in The Pianist, was 29 at the time of his win.
Yes, he was. So now on to Best Actress.
But it's your turn now.
Oh, okay. So the nominees are Yalitza Aparicio, Roma; Glenn Close, The Wife; Olivia Colman, The Favorite; Lady Gaga, A Star Is Born; and Melissa McCarthy, Can You Ever Forgive Me? Now, early on in this season, it looks like it was going to be a three-way race between Glenn Close, Olivia Colman, and Lady Gaga. Yet when Glenn Close very surprisingly won the Golden Globe for Best Drama Actress over Lady Gaga and gave such a memorable speech, the race started to become clearer. Especially,
Standing Two standing ovations, I should add, one in the middle of the speech, which you almost never see.
yes, and one as she went up to the stage.
Hmm.
Yes, and not to mention she's had additional wins at the Critics' Choice in a tie with Lady Gaga and the SAG Awards. And it looks like, no, this is an actress who currently shares an all-time record with Deborah Carr, speaking of which, and Thelma Ritter as the biggest losing actresses in Oscar history. And
Well, she actually has one more nomination than both of them.
well, yes, but if she loses this time, then she'll set a whole new record. But of course, we don't need to get into that right now.
Well, however, at least she doesn't share Peter O'Toole's dubious record of 8 nominations and no wins.
Well, yes, and it's also ironic because Close herself presented Deborah Carr her honorary Oscar.
Mm. Well, yeah. So yeah, I do think she'll win, and of course, and ironically, because we were talking about Rami Malek being potentially among the youngest winners of Best Actor, Glenn Close would rank among the top 10 oldest Best Actress winners if she is to win this category, because she's 71, I believe, currently. And I know the oldest winner to date was Jessica Tandy for Driving Miss Daisy, who was 80 at the time.
Yes, she was, and e- yeah,
I
Glenn
think,
Close is almost 72, actually.
yeah, so I was right. I think I remember reading she would be right behind Katharine Hepburn for On Golden Pond, because she was about 74, 75 when she won for that.
Uh huh.
So
So
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes, and however, it's while Glenn Close almost has this race sewn up. Olivia Colman now appears to be the one within striking distance for the favorite. I mean, she so far managed to win the Golden Globe for Comedy Actress and the BAFTA, but Though, with that being said, Coleman hasn't been able to do as much campaigning due to her commitments filming the upcoming third season of The Crown, while Close has been doing a lot more campaigning.
Hmm. Although, of course, sometimes even no campaigning can still give you a win, such as Mark Rylance winning for Bridge of Spies or Monique for Precious. But I do think in what'll hurt Olivia Colman more, I think, isn't the lack of campaigning, but rather her being unknown, because obviously many Oscar voters know who Glenn Close is and may feel that it's finally her time now, if because who knows if they may ever have a chance to reward her again.
Yeah.
And I know
So
they've
we'll
gotten
see if their Sunset Boulevard movie musical comes to fruition for Glenn Close.
yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, they keep saying it's gonna happen, but I won't believe it happens unless, like, actual set photos appear or something like that, or if, like
Or if it's officially greenlit by Paramount.
yeah. Well, I honestly don't see why we need another Sunset Boulevard movie when the original is already iconic enough. But anyway, so I think Olivia Colman, I think partly her win at the BAFTA was just because the Brits have known who she is for a long time, and she already won several BAFTA TV awards. So clearly, they really, really love her, and the BAFTAs like to reward their own when they can. So, but I have her in second place, followed by Lady Gaga, Yalitza Aparicio, and Melissa McCarthy.
Same exact rankings as me.
We should also note that Yalitza Aparicio is the first indigenous Mexican woman nominated for an Oscar, because we've had other Mexican nominees before, but they've all had like European ancestry, and Yalitza Aparicio does not. She's like completely 100% indigenous Mexican.
Yes, and we've even had some winners like Javier Bardem for No Country for Old Men or Benicio del Toro for Traffic.
True, but they have the European ancestry as part of their Hispanic heritage, whereas Yalitza Aparicio does not.
And that's true. So, are you ready to discuss Best Supporting Actor?
Yep.
Okay. And the nominees are
The nominees are Mahershala Ali, Green Book; Adam Driver, Black Klansman; Sam Elliott, A Star Is Born; Richard E. Grant, Can You Ever Forgive Me; and Sam Rockwell, Vice.
And despite having just won this award 2 years ago for Moonlight, Mahershala Ali is already looking to become a two-time Oscar winner this year for his performance in Green Book. He's won everything from Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, SAG, and BAFTA, so he pretty much has this race locked up at this point.
I do think he'll win, but if there's a possibility of some people feeling Green Book is too antiquated in its portrayal of race relations, maybe that could possibly lead to a surprise upset win by Richard E. Grant, who I have in second place. And I know,
And yeah, and he has been campaigning a lot. In fact, he's been very charming on the campaign trail.
hmm and I know, like, I remember seeing like a lot of film critics polls where they said if we pick the Oscars, here's who we would pick, and many of them picked him over Mahershala Ali. And of course, Richard E. Grant did win more critics prizes than Mahershala Ali did. So, but of course, critics prizes don't always translate to Oscars. I mean, look at poor Ethan Hawke for First Reformed.
Or Willem Dafoe and Laurie Metcalf last year.
Yeah, and I believe Chiwetel Ejiofor won more critics prizes for 12 Years a Slave than Matthew McConaughey did for Dallas Buyers Club.
And speaking of McConaughey, Mahershala Ali can currently be seen on the current season of True Detective, which we saw kind of helped Matthew McConaughey when he was on the first season during his Oscar season for Dallas Buyers Club.
That, as well as McConaughey, just kind of had an overall career resurgence with movies like The Lincoln Lawyer, Magic Mike, Mud. You know, so
Yes,
been
he did.
yeah, the McConaissance, as people called it.
Uh huh.
uh, um, where okay, but then the rest of my rankings, I have Sam Elliott in third place because he could very well be like the veteran actor finally getting his due, and this is his very first nomination. Um, So at least now, despite having to wait 50 years after his wife, Catherine Ross, getting her first and only nomination, at least now they're both Oscar nominees together, so that's nice for them.
Yes,
And then
it
I have Adam Driver in fourth place and Sam Rockwell in fifth.
once again exact same rankings as me.
All right. Well, next category is going to be very interesting considering how open-ended supporting actress has been.
Uh-huh. Yes, and so the nominees for Best Supporting Actress are Amy Adams, Vice, Marina Di Tavera for Roma, Regina King, If Beale Street Could Talk, Emma Stone, The Favorite, and Rachel Weisz, The Favorite. So early on in the season, Regina King was the early frontrunner in this category for her performance in If Beale Street Could Talk. While she does have wins from the Golden Globes and Critics' Choice to back her up, she somehow wasn't even nominated by SAG nor BAFTA, a similar problem Sylvester Stallone had 3 years ago when he was the presumed frontrunner for Creed. Though, of course, King obviously has much more respect in the industry than Stallone. But then again, SAG and BAFTA are both still two important precursor groups that share voters with the Academy.
True, although in BAFTA's case, they don't really award many movies about American issues. Sometimes they do, other times they don't. They often tend to go for the more British films. So her being snubbed at BAFTA, I guess, isn't too much of a surprise, although the SAG snub was certainly shocking. But again, I guess with the panel that they have the nominating, and it's like a different panel every year, it's often what did they see beforehand. So, but ultimately, despite the snubs, I do have Regina King winning. I think there's a lot of goodwill towards her in the industry. We've obviously seen that with her 3 Emmy wins in recent years, and the Academy has invited a lot more TV people into their ranks, so that could certainly give her a boost. Plus, she's been acting for over 30 years since she was in her teens, and she's had supporting roles in many notable movies over the years from like Boys in the Hood, Jerry Maguire, Ray, etc. So this could be kind of seen not just as a win for her for this movie, but also kind of a nice mid-career achievement award if some voters want to think that way. And there's just a lot of goodwill towards her as a person. It seems like she's just a very likable person, which and likability can often play a big factor into winning. And I
Well,
think
oh, sorry.
plus, if voters want to concentrate on if some voters are concerned about whether or not someone's committing category fraud, they don't have to worry about Regina King because if you see the movie, she's clearly a supporting role. She doesn't come across as a co-lead nominated in the wrong category.
Well, while you do make good points, and as well as the fact that she is in a better position to overcome the stat than Stallone. Though with that being said, I'm predicting the BAFTA winner Rachel Weisz.
Um, I'm putting her in second place because, I mean, some voters I think might feel, well, she already has an Oscar. Does she need another one right now? And
That's Mahershala Ali.
yeah, but like he's already been seen as kind of a clear favorite, so just I don't know. Plus there's a whole thing. Some voters might feel Rachel Weisz is more of a lead actress in the favorite than supporting because there was talks of who would be nominated in what category before the campaigners made it official, and maybe some voters might be torn between her and Emma Stone. So, I don't know. It's certainly a toss-up call, but I guess I'm going with Regina King because if voters do pay attention to who wins the Critics Awards, Regina King did pretty much sweep all the Critics Awards, including the really big ones like the New York Critics, Los Angeles Critics, the National Society of Film Critics, and Mark Rylance, when he won for Bridge of Spies, he won a lot of those same Critics Awards as well.
And though he also did at least have the BAFTA to back him up.
That's true, but I guess with hmm, plus, Regina King, if campaigning plays a big factor, she has been very upfront on the campaign trail. She's been out there a lot promoting the film. So, if voters do pay attention to campaigning, this will certainly help her. So, it's a tough call, but I'm going to go with her just because I think there might be the urge to give If Beale Street Could Talk something out of its few nominations. And if it's not going to win anything else, they might as well give it to her for this.
Well, on your comments about category fraud, we've seen being a lead and supporting help people in the past, like Jennifer Connelly in A Beautiful Mind or Alicia Vikander in The Danish Girl, and that's probably about to help Mahershala Ali for Green Book.
Yeah, but I mean, it just depends on how much voters feel split between Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone, because they could easily be considered like it depends on what voter who voters may think is the real focus of the film. Some might think it's Rachel Weisz, some might think it's Emma Stone. It's because The Favorite's one of those movies where anyone could look at it and up with a different opinion of whose story is it really telling, of which character, who is the real lead of The Favorite. Anyone might have a different opinion on it. So that I think might hurt it here. Well, at least in this category. But yeah, I mean,
Well, well, I'm sticking with Rachel because, well, look, if Regina King loses, I think this will be the final nail in the coffin in predicting the snub from SAG and BAFTA to win the Oscar.
true, but we could very well see Marcia Gay Harden's situation here, because if the Oscars have proven anything, it's that even the most unlikely people nominated can sometimes pull off a win.
Which would lead to my third place ranking my predictions, Maria T. Tavera.
And yeah, I actually have her ranked there as well. And then I have Amy Adams in fourth, because there could be the overdue narrative for her, although I don't think that's going to happen this time, just
Yeah,
because of the.
especially since it hasn't really taken off as much as Glenn Close's has.
Yeah. And then I have Emma Stone in last place.
The same here. Well, I agree with you on the bottom three, but we shall see what happens with Best Supporting Actress tomorrow night.
Hmm.
So now on to Best Original Screenplay.
Oh, yes. And the nominees are The Favorite, First Reformed, Green Book, Roma, and Vice.
Okay, the original screenplay race this year. Well, the original screenplay race this year has been pretty scattered. Green Book won the Golden Globe, which combines both adapted and original. First Reformed won the Critics' Choice. The Favorite won the BAFTA, and the unnominated Eighth Grade won the WGA. I'm predicting the favorites. I mean, it appears to be the most writerly driven out of all the nominees, and as one of my colleagues from Gold Derby, Amanda Spears, says, it's the most original.
Not only that, but it also showcases a trend of British royal films winning in this category, like we saw with Shakespeare in Love and The King's Speech, just to name a few.
Yes, indeed. And not to mention, oh man, it's such a hoot to holler. I mean, the dialogue is incredible. Well, it's really such a damn good movie.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
At
I have, as for the rest of my rankings, I have Green Book in second place, followed by Roma, Vice, and First Reformed.
I agree with most of the rankings. However, I have Roma in second and Green Book in third. And here are my reasons. If Green Book couldn't win the WGA, then that probably does, albeit the favorite wasn't even eligible there. I just have a feeling if it can win the WGA, then that probably bodes well for the favorites. Well, have Roma ranked higher because I just have a feeling if it wins there, then it's winning Best Picture.
Yeah, well, I have it ranked lower just because I think most people look at Roma as more of a directing accomplishment than a writing accomplishment, because some films are seen as more of a directing film and others are seen more of as a writing film. And I think Green Book, obviously with the Oscars, it seems like it's more of a writing film because Peter Farrelly was snubbed in the Best Director category, and he's been more commonly known for writing than directing, I guess, even though he's often served as writer and director on a lot of his own films. But I do, yeah. And I have seen, and then there has been some strong support of Green Book from some Academy members who've been wanting to defend it against the backlash it's received from some. So if voters want to give a finger to the detractors of Green Book, I imagine this would be one category where they could make the case for that. So that's kind of why I have it in second place. And if the PGA wins still mean anything, that's also partly why it's here as well, because we often do see a correlation between possible best picture and screenplay winners off several times, often going to the same film. So, yeah.
Well, I guess now on to Best Adapted Screenplay. You ready to talk?
Mhm.
Right, the nominees are The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Black Klansman, Can You Ever Forgive Me, If Beale Street Could Talk, and A Star Is Born. And like original screenplay, adapted has been pretty scattered this year. If Beale Street Could Talk won the Critics' Choice, Black Klansman won the BAFTA, and Can You Ever Forgive Me won the WGA. And well, I'm predicting Black Klansman because it's the only one of two Best Picture nominees in here, the other being A Star Is Born. But Black Klansman has more Best Picture heat, and it'd be the best way they can be able to give Spike Lee his first competitive Oscar.
I also have Black Klansman winning, and it's my second super bet. I think
I
there's
have
been
that's my
there,
first super bet actually.
there's just the urge to finally give Spike Lee a competitive Oscar for something, just kind of like how The Departed finally helped really win Martin Scorsese his first Oscar. And since Spike Lee probably won't win director, this would be the best place to give it to him here. And I think Black Klansman is the most writerly film of the nominees here. As it's a strong showcase for both its writing and its directing, and it manages to do a tricky balance of being both very dramatic and comedic in a movie where you don't think there would be room for any kind of comedy. Um, so, but I do have, based on its WGA win, I did have put Can You Ever Forgive Me in second place, followed by If Beale Street Could Talk, A Star Is Born, and then The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. And I have that ranked last because literally no one was predicting that would get nominated.
Yeah, but hey, I guess you must never underestimate the Coen brothers.
Yeah. Um,
Yes, and I have the exact same five rankings.
okay. So I guess next we move on to Best Cinematography.
Yes, and give me a minute here. All right, so the nominees for Best Cinematography are.
Cold War, The Favorite, Never Look Away, Roma, and A Star Is Born. I think Roma will easily win this because it's been getting so much praise for how it looks, and yeah, I think this is one of the solid locks of the night. I mean, possibly Cold War could upset because of its ASC win, which is why I have it in second place, but there's just been so much love and goodwill towards Roma that I think for its cinematography that I think that will help put it over the edge. And then as for the rest of my rankings, I have The Favorite in third place, followed by A Star Is Born and Never Look Away.
I agree. Well, I mean, I agree that Roma is out front. I mean, this is one of many awards Alfonso Cuarón will be taking home tomorrow night. So, yeah, betting against this point would be pretty foolish, especially considering that he originally intended the film to be shot by Emmanuel Lubezki, but, due to logistical reasons, Lubezki couldn't proceed after he had already done some preparations.
Mhm. Yeah, and well, what are the rest of your rankings though?
Oh, I'm checking. Yeah, as of now, I believe I have Roma, The Favorite, Cold War, A Star Is Born, and Never Look Away.
One thing that I think could possibly help, I guess, the favorite in an upset is, although I didn't get any confirmation about this, from what it looks of the favorite, it looked like they used a lot of natural light shooting for it because there are a lot of scenes that don't look overly lit in both day and night. Like some of the scenes look like they're only being lit either by the sunlight outside or just by the candlelight if it's a night scene. And we've seen natural light cinematography winners in the past, like Barry Lyndon famously, and also, of course, The Revenant.
Yes, indeed.
So, so if voters really want to go for the natural light, they might throw it to the favorite if they really love it that much. But I still think this is kind of Roma's lock to win.
Yes. And now, so I guess now, next is Best Costume Design.
Yep,
All right. And so the nominees, is it my turn or your turn?
yours.
Okay, the nominees for Best Costume Design are The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Black Panther, The Favorite, Mary Poppins Returns, and Mary Queen of Scots. Okay, so leading up to the Oscars, Black Panther won the Critics' Choice and the Costume Designers Guild for fantasy film. Meanwhile, The Favorites has won the BAFTA and Costume Designers Guild for period. So, where'd it go? I mean, Black Panther may not be the usual Oscar winner in this category, though we did see Mad Max Fury Road win Best Costume Design a few years ago. However, I'm predicting The Favorite to win. How about you?
I'm going with The Favorite as well because I think it's represents the most rule. It has the most costumes. It's the most lavish. Probably required the most historical research to pull off. And Sandy Powell clearly is a favorite amongst Oscar voters because this would mark her fourth win. And this actually is, and this wouldn't be the first time in which she was double nominated in the same year because, of course, 3 years ago she was a double nominee for both Carol and Cinderella. But of
Let's
course,
try Blanchett and lost to Mad Max Fury Road.
hmm but I think in this case, I think she'll win her fourth Oscar here for The Favorite because she's also a nominee for Mary Poppins Returns. But
Yeah,
clearly they seem to really like her period designs for the most part because most of the time she's been nominated, it's often for period films, and she often goes back and forth between like r 18th and 19th century and then, like, early 20th century. That seems to be her specialty.
yes, and although the names don't even appear on the ballots, I mean, I imagine there probably are some people who are aware she's a double nominee this year.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think just the most rule will apply to The Favorite because it just looks the costumes look very realistic, they don't feel like a cheap imitation. I do have Black Panther in second place because I guess some voters might be impressed by its how different it looks compared to other nominees,
Well, yeah, it is the apple in a bag of oranges.
and it does represent many different African tribal designs, and plus, if Ruth Carter wins, she would become the very first Black costume designer to ever win an Oscar, because this marks her third nomination, and it's her first nomination in over 20 years. So, because she was last nominated for Malcolm X and Amistad, I believe. And then the rest of my rankings, I have Mary Poppins Returns, followed by Mary Queen of Scots, and then The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
I have those same exact rankings.
Okay, wow, we're more like this year than I think we've been in almost any other year, it seems.
Yeah, and I should also point out that while the favorite may be the more obvious winner in this category, the costumes in that film are still far more elaborate than that of Black Panther.
True, but I can imagine though for Black Panther, those costumes. I mean, in both cases, I imagine for both the favorite and Black Panther, those costumes probably, I bet, I can only imagine. I just hope they were at least somewhat comfortable for the actors because I know at least Emma Stone said wearing the corset she had to wear, she said it literally shifted her organs.
Wow. So,
But then again, I guess that's what usually happen because often I've often seen in movies featuring those types of costumes, like with corsets, you hear the women saying, Am am I supposed to not breathe while wearing this?" Like like, I think I remember there was a remark in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie where, like, Keira Knightley says, this they're telling her, "Well, these are how the costumes are," and she's like, "Are women not supposed to breathe?" Alright, so yeah.
now,
Alright, so next up in which pr so next up, and this is probably one of the most toss-up categories, is best film editing.
indeed it is.
And in my own Oscar nominations video, which I posted on my own YouTube channel, I gave like a huge list of films that I thought would have been more worthy of nominations here than some of the nominees that we do have.
Yeah, like there's Stars Born, First Man, and Roma, all completely shut out of this category.
Yeah, I mean, even A Quiet Place would have been a more worthy nominee than, say, Bohemian Rhapsody or Green Book.
Yes, and so I guess whose turn is it to read off the nominees?
I believe it's mine.
Okay, and they are.
We have Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Favorite, Green Book, and Vice. So ultimately, after much deliberation, because we did see the Editors Guild, which splits into drama comedy, they gave it to Bohemian Rhapsody for drama and um, The Favorite for comedy, and First Man, I believe, won at the Critics' Choice, where it's not, and The First Man is not nominated here, surprisingly. But Vice managed to pull off a win at the BAFTAs, and we've seen the BAFTAs call upset wins at the Oscars several times, notably with Whiplash and Hacksaw Ridge. And I remember most people that year predicted Boyhood and La La Land would win the Oscars respectively, but nope, they followed the BAFTA's lead. So because of that, and I think given that Vice does have 8 nominations, which honestly is a little more than I anticipated it would get. I thought it might get maybe like 5 or 6 noms at the most. I'd have to go back and look at my original predictions, but because of the BAFTA lead and the voter overlap, I do think Vice will take it, especially considering how it weaves in documentary footage and these out of narration sequences, like with Jesse Plemons' character, because it's often what's the most different type of footage they edit together, what's like the most action packed or high paced footage that often wins this. So
Like
that's
our
Argo or Dunkirk last year, or uh, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Hacksaw Ridge, so a lot of fast-paced editing often wins here, which is why I have Vice winning. But then I do have Bohemian Rhapsody in second place because of its Guild win and because of John Ottman's precarious situation of having to salvage the film following Bryan Singer getting fired. Although maybe his past association with Bryan Singer, he's worked with him for over like 20 years.
Well,
For
yes.
some,
So as I previously mentioned, the names aren't on the ballot, so we don't know how much of the Academy is aware that John Ottman is the editor of Bohemian Rhapsody, let alone the fact his long associations with Bryan Singer.
true, but Hollywood, even though there's thousands of people living there, many of them probably have known each other for a long time, at least in some circles. So there will be some who, trust me, will be aware of John Ottman's long association with Bryan Singer, at least professionally. Like I don't know how often they hung out personally, out offset, but yeah, I do think that. But yeah, and then following that, I have the rest of my rankings: Black Klansman, The Favorite, and then Green Book.
Same 5 rankings as me.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and I should point out that if Black Klansman pulls an upset here, that could be a sign of strong support for the film.
Indeed, yeah. Well, that would be my personal pick to win out of these nominations. And after we finish recording this, I'm going to be posting my full who will win, who should win for all 24 Oscar categories on my Facebook page.
Great. So now on to the next category, which is best makeup and hairstyling, and it's an easier one.
It's your turn.
Yes. And so the nominees are Border, Mary Queen of Scots, and Vice. And I think this is a slam dunk for Vice. I mean, it's not only the Best Picture nominee, but a lot of well deserved credit must be given to the hair and makeup team of that movie. They literally had to transform so much of the cast into the real life people they were playing, from Christian Bale as Dick Cheney to Amy Adams as Lynn Cheney to Sam Rockwell as George W. Bush.
And don't forget Steve Carell as Donald Rumsfeld and Tyler Perry as Colin Powell.
Well, I know. I was just mentioning the obviously the the more noteworthy ones.
Yeah, but I mean, but Steve Carell's transformation as Donald Rumsfeld in particular was also quite striking. And
Yes,
I
it
honestly think, I honestly think if they were to give a supporting actor nomination to Vice, Steve Carell would have been more worthy than Sam Rockwell, because Sam Rockwell's performance is more or less just a glorified cameo, whereas Steve Carell really has a lot more screen time.
mhm. Yes. So as for the rest of my rankings, Vice, Mary Queen of Scots, and Border.
Yep, those are my same rankings as well. And once again, we've said before, please just expand the category to 5 nominees. It's getting ridiculous at this point to only have 3. I don't know why the makeup artists and hairstylist branch only keeps letting this happen. Why don't they advocate for more on the board of governors about this? I
Well, yeah,
mean,
I happen to be Facebook friends with member of the makeup branch. I should ask him about that sometime. But in the meantime, I have a petition you should sign to get the Academy to expand the number of nominees.
I think I already did sign it.
Well, I know. I was just pointing that to the audience watching or listening to this.
Yeah. If there were if they did allow, like, say yeah, I mean, it's a shame that they couldn't allow, like, if the 5 nominees because then we easily probably could have gotten nominations for films like The Favorite or excuse me, Suspiria, or maybe even Stan and Ollie.
Yeah, or Black Panther or Bohemian Rhapsody.
Mhm. Yeah. Alright, and then next up is Best Production Design, which is another category that has a lot of people split over who they think will win.
Mhm.
And I believe it's my turn now, and the nominees are Black Panther, The Favorite, First Man, Mary Poppins Returns, and Roma. I thought a lot about this, but I ultimately decided to go with Black Panther because sci-fi fantasy films do actually have a good track record of winning in this category, like we've seen with Mad Max Fury Road or um,
Avatar.
Avatar or Alice in Wonderland, and then even going back to previous decades, films like Alien have won this category. And I have a feeling that I also have a feeling that voters will feel the need to give Black Panther at least 1 or 2 awards because if Black Panther were to go home completely empty-handed, I can imagine, like, a lot of angry articles decrying that situation, saying, "Black Panther was a groundbreaking movie, it should have won at least something."
Yes, and I do have Black Panther winning production design as well, given the enormous world building of Wakanda. Plus, with the entire Academy voting in all 24 categories, I have a feeling they'll be voting for the most production design.
True, but you could also say the same thing about The Favorite because they had to recreate an 18th century palace, and obviously none of that was CGI, I'm sure, because I don't know how much CGI was used in Black Panther, but I bet they probably had to use, like, blue screen or green screen for some aspects of the set, which could possibly hurt Black Panther, especially if there are older voters or just voters in general who just don't like comic book or superhero movies, because that could possibly hurt Black Panther. But I think though with the expansion of Academy members of diversity and just the overall respect Black Panther has had, at least with the guilds, that could certainly help it here. And of course, if it should win, the production designer Hannah Beachler would become the first ever African American winner in the category.
Yes. As for my rankings, I have Black Panther, The Favorite, First Man, Mary Poppins Returns, and Roma.
Okay, well, I have the same top two, but I actually have Roma in third place because if it is going to win Best Picture, I think, and if voters like to go for realism, I think it could really help it here because, you know, Alfonso Cuarón pretty much had to take an area of Mexico City and literally turn it back in time to the early 1970s with everything from, like, the cars to the interior of the house, and just, it really pops up out at you and it really makes you feel like you're there in that time. It doesn't feel like a cheap imitation, it feels like the real thing. And then I have Mary Poppins Returns in fourth place because they do a fantastic job of recreating the sets from the original film. And then I have First Man in last place.
Oh, well, I have First Man ranked higher because it has more obvious production design than Roma.
Hmm. That's true, but sometimes some voters might want, like, sometimes there might be some voters who might go for the simplest and most realistic production design rather than the most amount of production design or the most fantasy related. I guess comes all down to taste overall, but I think Roma, we've seen best picture and best production design winners correlate a lot of the time, so that's why I have Roma ranked in the middle.
Oh, well, I'm doing calculations here, and no, I don't believe there's been a best. Oh, well, okay. I think there's only so far only one Best Picture winner has only taken production design as well within this past decade, which would be The Shape of Water.
Yeah, well, I just think but I guess just with the recreation of the black and white look, I guess, as well, I think that also might help Roma because, as we've said before, what's the apple in the bag of oranges or vice versa, and that would certainly be it, I think.
Well, you could almost say the same thing about Black Panther, given that it's set in present day and it has to create entire fantasy world, whereas the others are all period pieces.
Mm, true, but, like, with Roma, what could possibly help it there is that Alfonso Cuarón really had to get the look of 1970s down to a T with kind of, like, literally recreating his childhood home from, like, the wallpaper design to pretty much everything inside the house to having to get those old models of like 1970s era cars and just and get everything to kind of bring that area of Mexico City back to life at the time. And that obviously would have taken like a lot of time and manpower, but still I think it's a toss up between the Black Panther and the Favorite because they do play into the traditional rules, but I just think given the more diversity in the academy, if like foreign voters especially want to reward Roma, I could see many of them their checking that off on their ballots as a result.
Okay, so I guess now on to best original score.
Yes, and it's your turn.
Yeah. So the nominees for Best Original Score are Black Panther, Black Klansman, If Beale Street Could Talk, Isle of Dogs, and Mary Poppins Returns. So this has to be the most wide open race of the year. First Man won both the Golden Globe and Critics' Choice in this category, yet wasn't even recognized by the Academy. And BAFTA didn't do us any favors either, as their award for Best Film Music, which combines both scores and soundtracks, went to A Star Is Born. So where do you stand?
It was a very tough call, and I actually kind of flipped back and forth several times when making these predictions, but after a long deliberating process, I ultimately settled on Black Panther because of its recent Grammy win, and even though I did notice at the Grammys there has been a lot more splits between Grammy and Oscar wins for original score, mainly due to like the eligibility schedules of both awards. There have been some notable lineups of where both organizations picked the same winner, and I
And the
just
last
think
time they did that, I believe, was the Grand Budapest Hotel.
both the Grammys and the Oscars did reward this La La Land for its score.
Well, I meant leading up to the Oscars, is what I meant.
Oh, I thought you meant with like just overall winners. Okay. But Black Panther, I think its score has been widely praised and analyzed and discussed and noted for its use of like African instrumentation and things like that, which could help it stand out here. And
Got a
there,
distinct African sound.
mhm. And given that Black Panther is not expected to win Best Original Song, if voters feel they want to honor it for its music or just in general, this might be one of the safest categories to do so.
Mhm.
Although I do have If Beale Street Could Talk in second place because quite a lot of time voters want to reward a score that feels like its own unique character. And If Beale Street Could Talk certainly fits that because there's a lot of very emotional, swelling moments in the score.
Oh,
And
yeah.
given that,
I actually do think Beale Street has the best score of the nominees. It not only feels and sounds
mm,
very moving, but also very distinct.
yeah, that's what I would personally like to see win. And plus, Nicholas Britell this time doesn't have to compete against La La Land like he did when he was nominated for Moonlight.
Oh, he
So
does
maybe
compete against Justin Hurwitz.
mhm. So, with that out of the way, that could maybe help him. But then again, we've often seen a strong correlation between scores that win and that same film is nominated for Best Picture. It's very rare for a Best Original Score winner to not have a Best Picture nomination.
Especially in recent years. The only time it's happened was 2015, but that was Ennio Morricone finally winning his first competitive Oscar for The Hateful Eight.
And I think the last time it happened before that, I'll have to go back and check, but I think that the last time that happened was in 1999 for a film called The Red Violin, which I don't believe was nominated for anything else but its score. But I did watch that film years ago on Netflix, and it's hard to it's easy to see why it won it's that Oscar because the film is literally about a red violin that is literally handed down to people of different generations and cultures throughout the centuries, everywhere from Europe to Asia to North America. It's quite a fascinating film if you've never seen it.
Yeah, as for the rest of my rankings, I have Black Panther, If Beale Street Could Talk, Black Klansman. It's worth noting that composer Terrence Blanchard also recently won a Grammy for Best Instrumental Composition he wrote for that film. And if he pulls off a win here, that could be a sign of support for the film. And fourth place, I have Mary Poppins Returns, and fifth, Isle of Dogs.
Oh, those are my rankings as well, all same five. And
Oh,
of
great.
course, we should mention that if Mark Shaman wins for Mary Poppins Returns, either here or in song, he'll become the latest EGOT member.
Yes, though that narrative hasn't really taken off, so it doesn't look like he has much of a shot.
No, but I mean, in case he somehow does pull off a win in either, it would put him in that club, though. It's just worth noting.
It is true, but hey, hopefully, he can get more high-profile film work to get him there.
Yeah. All right, and then
Best
next,
original song is next.
yep. And the nominees here are All the Stars from Black Panther, I'll Fight from RBG, The Place Where Lost Things Go from Mary Poppins Returns, Shallow from A Star is Born, and When a Cowboy Trades His Spurs for Wings from The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. And who are we kidding? This is easily going to go to Shallow from A Star is Born. I have a feeling it's going to receive way more votes than probably all four other nominees combined.
I agree. This is one of the easiest categories of the year, and so it's not only looking to be the best place to award A Star Is Born, but also Lady Gaga's overall contributions to the film, as she is one of the songwriters.
Mhm. And of course, this would follow in the footsteps of the 1976 film version, which also won Best Original Score. And even though Barbara Streisand did not receive an acting nomination for that film, she did at least win her second Oscar for writing the song Evergreen from that version of A Star is Born.
Uh huh. Yes. As for the rest of my rankings, they are Shallow, All the Stars, I'll Fight, The Place Where Lost Things Go, and When a Cowboy Trades His Spurs for Wings.
Ah, my same rankings as well.
Ah, we're on a roll today.
All
So,
right, well, all right. Well, next up we have the two sound categories, and that's probably where things are going to get interesting, I bet.
yes. So, is it your turn or my turn to read off nominees for sound editing?
Yours.
Okay. The nominees for best sound editing are Black Panther, Bohemian Rhapsody, First Man, A Quiet Place, and Roma. So, I'm predicting Black Panther to win. I mean, it has a wide variety of sound effects they had to create for all the action sequences and World of Wakanda, and it's a pretty loud movie. So, what about you?
I'm actually predicting First Man will win.
Oh, I would love to see that happen, but then again, I have to keep statistics in mind that so far within the expanded era, only one film has won Best Sound Editing without a Best Picture nomination, and that was Skyfall back in 2012, albeit it was in a tie with Zero Dark 30.
Which itself was another Best Picture nominee. However, I think that with Black Panther, it's received most of its praise for things like its production design, costume design, and music. And my feeling is voters will feel, well, it sounds pretty much the same as almost any other superhero film, and we did, and I do know we did see another superhero film win this category 10 years ago with The Dark Knight winning sound editing. However, it happened to, even though that technically is a superhero film, yes, it did contain, I guess, a lot more traditional elements from what you see winning here because The Dark Knight, unlike Black Panther, didn't involve like battles and spaceships and things like that, where it involved things like car chases, explosions, and just the typical things you see win sound editing because sound editing winners tend to be either space films, war films, action films, particularly ones with, like, say, car chases. So if your film does not check off any of those three boxes, then I don't think you'll win. And given the fact that we do know there are a lot of industry folks who don't like comic book movies and don't like seeing Black Panther nominated, like at least in the top categories, I can't. And if given that no other superhero film since The Dark Knight has been nominated and won for this, I just can't help but feel that they won't. I just feel that they won't give it to Black Panther here. I just feel that if First Man is going to win something, this might be a safe place to win. And plus, if voters want to finally give more women recognition in sound, they could do that here because both of the sound editors nominated for First Man are women, which is something we rarely see.
Well, yes, though again, the names aren't on the ballot, so we don't know how many Academy members are even aware of that.
True, but remember when they release the full list of nominations, they always include, at least in the press releases, they always include the people's names, and I imagine voters probably print those out just to keep a track of what they've seen and what they haven't seen yet. So, and they're yeah. But yeah, I just feel that black we since we don't have a strong track record of superhero and comic book movies winning this outside of The Dark Knight, I'm hesitant to see what Black Panther will do here. So yeah, that's why my overall rankings are First Man, A Quiet Place, which did pick up some wins at the Motion Sound Editors Guild Award, but given that it's a horror movie, which traditionally doesn't do well at the Oscars in most categories,
Nomination it received.
that too. That's why I have it in second place, although A Quiet Place would be my personal pick to win, followed by Bohemian Rhapsody, which did win at the Sound Guilds. Then I have Black Panther in fourth place, followed by Roma.
Okay, my rankings are Black Panther, Bohemian Rhapsody, First Man, Roma, and A Quiet Place.
Quiet Place in last place. Wow.
Well, I'm just not willing to predict a full nominee in a sound category until I actually see it happen.
True. Although with A Quiet Place, guild wise, it has done much better at guild awards than most horror films typically do. And at least with, I could imagine it. I can imagine like a lot of younger voters who are like, say, under the age of 40 in particular, I could see them possibly voting for this, especially since most of the people involved in A Quiet Place are under the age of 40.
Well, yes, but yeah, I mean, I just would have at least appreciated if Quiet Place had a little more recognition, like if it was nominated in sound mixing as well.
Yeah. I would have loved to have seen it nominated for several awards, like not only sound mixing, but I would have loved to have seen it gotten, like, say, a film editing nomination. And heck, if John Krasinski, I think, would have been a more worthy Best Director nominee than, say, Paul Polakowski or Adam McKay.
That is true.
So, yeah, but just for the reasons I said before, at least with my prediction for First Man, that's why I have it winning. Just because I think sound is going to continue to follow the traditional path for a while until like all the older sound editors and mixers die off and the new crop becomes the old crowd.
No. Well, in any case, I guess now is a good segue into best sound mixing, and I believe it's your turn to read off the nominees.
Yes, and they are. Oh yes, they are Black Panther, Bohemian Rhapsody, First Man, Roma, and A Star Is Born. And although it wouldn't, and I think because of its guild wins and because so much praise has been showered towards the Live Aid segment of this film, I think Bohemian Rhapsody will take it.
Me too. Musicals usually have a great track record of winning this award, and while Bohemian Rhapsody is not a musical, it is at least a music-driven film along the lines of Amadeus, Bird, Ray, and Whiplash.
And La La Land, which shockingly lost this award to Hacksaw Ridge of all
Well, La La
things.
Land is a musical, not a music-driven film.
True, but we did see a full-fledged musical, Les Miserables, win this award.
As well as Chicago and Dreamgirls.
hmm Which is why I thought La La Land would win as well when it came around. So it
Yeah,
losing to
was
Hacksaw
that.
Ridge, it losing to Hacksaw Ridge was quite a shocker.
Yes, and that probably meant first sign that La La Land was vulnerable, but on the bright side, Kevin O'Connell finally broke his losing streak.
Yeah, but it shouldn't have happened for that film, though. All right, but anyway, so I have Bohemian Rhapsody winning, although I do think A Star Is Born could possibly upset because if people if there are people upset about Rami Malek mainly lip syncing in Bohemian Rhapsody, they could very well give it to A Star Is Born, since many of those concert scenes were filmed live, and Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga did do their own singing. So, and having to combine live footage, you know, and them singing their own stuff, that could probably appeal to a lot of people. Um, and then I follow that up with First Man, Black Panther, and Roma.
Okay, my rankings are Bohemian Rhapsody, First Man, A Star Is Born, Black Panther, and Roma.
Okay, so we're not too far off there.
Now on to best visual effects. And so it's my turn. And the nominees are, let's see. The nominees for best visual effects are Avengers Infinity War, Christopher Robin, First Man, Ready Player One, and Solo: A Star Wars Story.
All right. Well, even though this took home the supporting honor rather than the main honor at the Visual Effects Society Awards, I do have First Man winning because it is the most nominated film here and it is the most realistic, which is typically what voters go for in this category. They don't really tend to go for the most visual effects, but rather the most realistic visual effects, which is why we've seen winners in the past include films like Forrest Gump, Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Hugo, etc.
Yeah, I have First Man winning as well. I think this is the best place to award it, and I know I know Avengers: Infinity War is out front, and it could become the first Marvel Cinematic Universe film to win this award. But it is worth noting that First Man is also the only film in contention here that has more nominations because everything else is a sole nominee.
Yeah, that's true, and I kind of did say that when I said First Man is the most nominated film here. But I mean, I guess Avengers: Infinity War could have a chance because it is very visual effects heavy, and I know a lot of people were very impressed by the motion capture performance of Josh Brolin as Thanos. Maybe that that could possibly help. But then again, Andy Serkis's motion capture performance as Caesar couldn't help any of the three Planet of the Apes films, which all lost in their respective years. So
More
that
more celebrated films by the Academy.
mhm, yeah. So
Yes. And I should also add that, while First Man may not have the showiest effects out of all the nominees, it could still stand out as the apple in a bag of oranges, or vice versa, in a race that's mostly filled with CGI extravaganzas.
plus, it would feature in the long, long line of space-related films that have won everything from like 2001: A Space Odyssey to Gravity and Interstellar in recent years. So we have a long tradition of space films winning this honor.
Indeed, although Apollo 13 did not, but then again, it was up against Babe.
Right. And it would actually be kind of a nice thing if First Man would win because it would be on the 50th anniversary of 2001: A Space Odyssey winning this category, and of course, the very year that 2001: A Space Odyssey won the Oscar, a few months later, that's when Apollo 11 landed on the moon.
Ooh, good call, good call. Uh-huh.
And of course, 2001: A Space Odyssey featured a sequence of astronauts on the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but as for the rest of my rankings, I have Avengers: Infinity War in second place, followed by Ready Player One, Solo: A Star Wars Story, and Christopher Robin.
Same rankings as me.
Mm, all right. Well, next up we have Best Animated Feature.
Yes. And so the nominees for Best Animated Feature are.
Incredibles 2, Isle of Dogs, Mirai, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And despite Disney and Pixar's dominance in this category throughout most of the time since it was created, I think this year Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse will win. I think it's unbeatable at this point. It's swept through all the major awards, Golden Globes, Annies, BAFTAs, Critics' Choice. So, if and given the fact that very few sequels in general have won, like we all thought How to Train Your Dragon 2 would win, it lost to Big Hero 6, and the only sequel I can remember winning is Toy Story 3 because we all thought that would be the end of the Toy Story franchise, and of course now it's not. And given that, you know,
As well as the fact that it was a Best Picture nominee.
Hmm. Well, plus Toy Story 3 just generated such an emotional response from those who saw it that nothing else could really compare. So just the overall sequel weariness, I think, and just the fact that it's probably the most original film of these nominees will help Spider-Man really stand out.
Yes. And not to mention, this would be the first time since 2011 that a non-Disney animated film won this category.
And it would also make history because one of the film's directors, Peter Ramsey, would be the is the first African American nominee ever in the category and would thus become the first ever winner.
Yes, he would. And so as for the rest of my rankings, I have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Isle of Dogs, Incredibles 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and Mirai.
Ah, my same exact rankings.
Yes, and I have, Isle of Dogs in second place, given that, well, its originality as well as the fact that if enough awareness is made of the fact that Wes Anderson is overdue for an Oscar, I can definitely see him getting some sympathy votes.
Plus the voice cast in this movie in Isle of Dogs is like it's like as star-studded as you can get because you have Bryan Cranston, Harvey Keitel, Edward Norton, Bill Murray, F. Murray Abraham, Scarlett Johansson, Tilda Swinton, Frances McDormand, and the list goes on and on.
Yes. So I guess now on to best documentary feature film, and the nominees are Free Solo, Hale County Hale County this evening, Minding the Gap, of Fathers and Sons, and RBG, and No, Won't You Be My Neighbor. So what do you have winning?
Uh, well, I should mention that if Won't You Be My Neighbor had been nominated here, I would have gotten all five of my predictions of who I thought would be nominated correct. Because
Mhm.
of Fathers and Sons was the only nominee that I did not predict. But ultimately, like there's been a big toss up between Free Solo and RBG, but I ultimately picked Free Solo because it's been winning a lot of guild awards and it seems to be generating the most buzz because it's one of those once in a lifetime how the hell did they pull that off kind of movies, whereas RBG is like your standard biographical documentary, a very good one, and what I would personally like to see win. But Free Solo just has that it factor because it's portraying something that we've literally never seen before. And the
Mhm.
filmmakers, as well as the main subject, Alex Honnold, they were literally playing a game of life or death by making this film.
Yeah.
So voters may not want to reward them not only for like the amazing fact the way they pulled off this film, but the fact that they all lived to tell the tale.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, I agree. I think Free Solo is winning. While RPG has the most nominations overall of the films in contention here, I think people will be more impressed by Free Solo. So as for the rest of my rankings, Free Solo, RPG, Minding the Gap, Hale County this evening, and of Fathers and Sons.
Yep, my same rankings as well.
Great. So now on to Best Foreign Language Film, and the nominees are.
All right, we have Capernaum from Lebanon, Cold War from Poland, Never Look Away from Germany, Roma from Mexico, and Shoplifters from Japan. And I think if you don't predict Roma's going to win this, people are going to think you're crazy. So Roma will easily win this, although if there's any slight possibility of an upset, it's probably going to be Cold War. And then the rest of my rankings are Shoplifters, Capernaum, and Never Look Away.
I have most of those same rankings, though I have Capernaum ranked higher than Shoplifters, but who are we kidding? We know it's gonna be Roma.
Yeah. I did originally put Capernaum in third place, but then I remembered that Shoplifters won the Palme d'Or at Cannes last year, which probably makes it a little more prestigious. Although I did manage to see four of the five. I didn't get to see Never Look Away in time, but I guess if I were to rank them personally from what I've seen, I would rank them as such: Roma, Capernaum, uh, Cold War, and Shoplifters. Yeah.
I guess now on to the short categories, which are always the most difficult ones to predict.
Okay, and let's see. So for best,
Hey,
where's my thing?
my turn.
Oh yes, is right. It is your turn.
All right. So for best animated short film, the nominees are Animal Behavior, uh, Bao or Bao, however it's pronounced, Late Afternoon, One Small Step, and Weekends. And I'm predicting Bao or Bao to win.
I believe it's pronounced bow.
Yeah, Bao. I'm predicting that to win.
Me too, because it's the most seen of these because it was played in front of Incredibles 2. It's been There are some now considering it one of Pixar's best animated shorts ever. It's very relatable because it deals with themes about parenthood, and of course it also is history making in the fact that it's the very first Pixar short film ever to be directed by a woman,
Hmm.
Domi Shi, who and she'd make history not only for being a woman, but she'd also join that small but hopefully will grow larger in the near future group of Asian Oscar winners and for both on camera and off camera awards.
Yes. And as for my overall rankings, Bao, Weekends, Animal Behavior, Late Afternoon, and One Small Step.
Well, I have the same top two, but I have One Small Step in third place, Animal Behavior in fourth, and Late Afternoon in fifth.
Okay. How come?
Well, One Small Step, it has a very strong root factor because it's about a young girl. Well, it starts off young, and when we see her grow up from childhood to adulthood, and it's about her lifelong dream of becoming an astronaut, and you really root for her, especially when she has to go through some tragic events. And then Animal Behavior, it's a unique situation in which it showcases like a behavior, well, like a therapy group like you would see in a psychiatrist's office, only of course the psychiatrist and the people in the group are all animals. And then Late Afternoon is kind of the most, I have it ranked last because it's about a elderly woman with dementia trying to remember her childhood, and that's pretty much it. So it has probably the least story, I guess. So it's like what has the biggest story arc, I think, that tends to win here.
And in fact, it is also worth noting that one of the head honchos at Gold Derby, Chris Beecham, often, says when it comes to predicting the short categories, at least the animated ones, go for the ones with the animals.
Mm, yeah, either with animals or at least with like someone you're really rooting for. But like, but even though visibility can help, like with the short film Piper from Pixar a few years ago, it doesn't always determine the winner. Like we all thought Get a Horse would win this category because it played in front of Frozen, but nope, it lost to the French cartoon Mr. Hublot, which that year actually made me a little angry because I thought Mr. Hublot was easily the weakest of the nominees that year.
Hmm. Yeah, so are you ready to move on to Best Documentary Short Subject?
Yes, and the nominees are Black Sheep, Endgame, Lifeboat, A Night at the Garden, and Period End of Sentence.
I'm predicting period end of sentence to win. How about you?
Yep, I'm predicting that as well because I've noticed the trend in recent years is to voters tend to give it to a short that is about people trying to make a positive change in their society, especially in a society that isn't may not be as caught up as like say traditional Western society. And Period End of Sentence follows these women in a small village in India who have for generations have had to deal with the taboo subject of their periods privately because that's like something no one wants to get involved with, and they're taught how to make their own sanitary pads, and it gives many of them their very first jobs and able to help them become not completely financially dependent on their husbands.
Yes.
Plus it's like the most plus it also is the I guess the most positive of these nominees,
Yeah.
whereas
One of my colleagues at Gold Derby, Denton Davidson, did an article explaining some long shot predictions he's doing, which one of them is this category, and he's predicting period end of sentence for some of the reasons you just mentioned.
mhm. Well, I noticed a lot of experts are predicting it to win as well. They're split between either that or Black Sheep, which I do have in second place, and it could possibly win because it's certainly a unique story about a black teenager who, when trying to fit in with all the racist white kids in his neighborhood, he decides the only way to do so is to literally start acting like them. And but I guess the problem is it ends very abruptly and we don't find out if I assume he doesn't hang out with those people anymore, but we never find out why he stopped hanging out with them or what led him to change his mind about them. So that maybe could hurt it if voters felt they wanted more explanation. And then I have Lifeboat in third place because we have seen nominations about this migrant crisis before in recent years. So it's clearly a big news topic that's still very relevant. And then I have Endgame in fourth, and then A Night at the Garden in fifth.
Okay, my rankings are period end of sentence, Black Sheep, Endgame, A Night at the Garden, and Lifeboat.
Well, I have A Night at the Garden in last place just simply because all it is just literally archival footage, and that's it. It's only like 7 minutes long, and I'm guessing the filmmaker wanted to let the footage speak for itself, which it does. But I bet some Oscar voters might want some more historical context, either from voiceover narration or maybe an interview with a historian giving more context about this event, which is why I think it has no chance of winning at all.
Okay.
Because it's very well done, but it comes across more like a glorified high school project than an Oscar-winning film.
Okay, so I guess are you ready to discuss the final category? All
Yes.
right, and that's best live action short film. And the nominees are Detainment, Fauve, is that how it's pronounced?
I think I assume it's pronounced Fauve because anytime I see an AU, it always has like an O sound.
Okay, Fauve, Marguerite,
Marguerite.
Marguerites, thank you, Mother and Skin. So I have Marguerite winning this. How about you?
Same because this, while the best live action short film category tends to have some pretty sad and depressing nominees every year, this year it seems to be way more sad and depressing than most. And Marguerite, while maybe not like sunshine and roses happy, it's the only one of them that has, I guess what you could say, a happy ending compared to all the rest. And it's, while the others deal with tragedy, this one's just about the bond between an old woman and her nurse. And that, but I know I did read Denton's article about his predictions, and I know he's predicting Skin to win, which I do have in second place because it does feature an interesting story with some pretty shocking moments, moments like, I saw it in the theater and I could literally hear the audience gasp, especially in the very, very end. But I do think it does touch upon some tricky subjects. It's about a group of racist white skinheads and a group of black people who have this racial rivalry going on because of a horrific incident that happens. And some of the shocking moments I think might be too shocking for some voters. So that's why I don't really think it'll win, but I still have it in second place, and then I have Detainment in third because while it has gotten a lot of criticism, especially in the UK, because it's about the boys who murdered little James Bulger, and James Bulger's parents have denounced the film being nominated, and there's been an online petition with over 200,000 signatures to get the film's nomination revoked, for which the Academy did respond and say, no, we won't revoke it because no legal guidelines were broken here. I do think the controversy alone will probably prevent a lot of British voters from voting for this because the James Bulger story is very well known in the UK because it caused huge shockwaves of horror when it happened there. But I do think it could have somewhat of a chance to win because American voters may not be as familiar with the story as British ones are. And the acting in this film is quite extraordinary. I mean, the young boys who play James Bulger's killers, Robert Thompson and John Venables, their acting is honestly some of the most powerful I've seen from child actors in a long time. I mean, if they gave out Oscar nominations for acting in short films, both of these boys would easily be deserving of nominations.
As for your bottom two rankings,
Uh, I have Mother in fourth place because it pulls off a very tricky thing of containing the action to pretty much just one room. because it's about a mother whose son calls her saying, "Help, my dad's disappeared." And we never see the little boy, we only hear him over the phone. So it kind of feels like a stage play, but it's so powerful, it hooks you, and you're so invested in it that when it ends, you're just like, and then I have Fauve in last place because Fauve, well, I wouldn't say it's open-ended. Well, it's kind of open-ended with its ending, but it implies that something happens, but we never see the fallout from what happens, and I feel some voters may feel cheated by that. Plus, Fauve also puts children in dangerous situations, and if voters don't like that kind of thing, that could hurt them as well. I remember I remember interestingly, Roger Ebert once said one of the types of films he and Gene Siskel often disagreed about the most was films that put children in various dangerous situations, as Gene Siskel often hated those types of movies.
Wow.
But Roger Ebert was like more open-minded because I remember in his review of the horror movie Orphan in 2009, Roger Ebert said if Gene Siskel had seen it, he probably would have hated it.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And Roger Ebert, he liked Orphan. He gave it like 3 or 3.5 out of 4 stars.
So I guess he probably would have given it 2 thumbs up.
Yeah. Or I guess thumbs up, because usually when in the past when Gene Siskel was alive, 2 thumbs up would mean that both Siskel and Ebert gave the film positive reviews.
Okay. As for my rankings, I'm pretty much in agreement with you on that.
Mm. Now this year, did you actually see the short films?
No, I'm just placing. Well, not all of them. I did see a couple of the documentary short nominees, such as Endgame and Period End of Sentence, given that they're both on Netflix.
But like, is was there a theater near you that was playing them in like a screen in like a package?
Not that I know of. I mean, no. I guess I should be keeping better track of that.
Yeah. And actually, there's one thing I forgot to mention about Skin. Skin actually kind of, you could say, has the most star power because while I don't recognize any of the adult actors here, both the white and black groups of people both have children that are caught in the center of the conflict. And both the child actors here are actually have had some notable credits. The white boy is played by Jackson Robert Scott, who of course played Georgie in the 2017 remake of It, and the black boy is played by Lonnie Chavis, who currently plays young Randall on This Is Us.
Hmm. Very interesting.
I don't know if Oscar voters will have made that connection like I did, because I remember watching, I'm thinking, I didn't recognize Jackson Robert Scott at first because he literally has a shaved head, but I did recognize Lonnie Chavis. I was thinking, is that young Randall from This Is Us? And sure enough, it was him.
Okay, so that's just about covers it. We've covered all 24 categories. So so I guess before we go, what are your expectations for the Oscar telecast tomorrow night? It's gone through such turmoil from obviously Kevin Hart originally being announced as host, but then quit. So now we're left with no host unless the rumors come true that Whoopi Goldberg is the surprise host. And well, and not all the nominated songs will be performing. Only 4 of them will be, which hey, is at least more than 2, which as previously reported. And and what are your expectations?
uh, I'm just hoping that it's still just a good show. And I mean, hopefully with no host, maybe at least if they're worried about keeping the show at a shorter length, maybe that'll make that happen. But I imagine since they said Queen is performing, I imagine they'll probably open the show because I can't really imagine them being placed right in the middle of the show. I imagine them opening the show will be a great way to bring in a lot of viewers because
Yeah, I agree.
I imagine their presence on the show was probably did primarily to increase the ratings. Although I'm sure the members would have still been invited to the show because of Bohemian Rhapsody's Best Picture nomination.
Hmm.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see like how they at least open the show. Like, will they have just the announcer voice saying "Welcome to the 91st Academy Awards," or will they have a celebrity come on stage to welcome everyone? I mean, it'll be interesting because, of course, the very last time there was no host was in 1989, and that was considered the absolute worst Oscar ceremony of all time. So bad that even though the Oscars YouTube channel has like the winners in their show accepting their awards, the Oscars have never uploaded the infamous Rob Lowe Snow White musical number to their channel, which which means even they know that was bad.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
well,
and,
of
and I
course,
remember
the Oscars rarely upload performances to their YouTube channel.
well, they have uploaded a lot of those old opening number segments from like the ceremonies of the past, like with Billy Crystal's.
Well, I mean, rarely. I mean, at least with the best song nominees.
Right, yeah, but I'm talking about, like, the opening production number of the 1989 Oscars, which the with like, with Snow White and Rob Lowe and, like, the "I Wanna Be an Oscar Winner," like, those are what gained so much flack from critics and even Hollywood itself, like, there was a massive open letter signed afterwards, signed by people like Paul Newman, Gregory Peck, Julie Andrews, and everyone you could think of denouncing the ceremony as being disgraceful.
Mhm.
And also b and of course but I should say not having a host was not the reason why that ceremony bombed so badly. It was because of those gaudy production numbers that Alan Carr, the show's producer, created. And I remember reading the account by Eileen Bowman from who played Snow White that she wrote for the Hollywood Reporter. And according to her, she said pretty much everyone knew that number would those numbers would be a disaster and everyone wanted Alan Carr to scrap them, but he said, "Nope, it's my show. I'm doing what I want. Deal with it."
Oh, well,
And but there's one positive thing Alan Carr did that has stuck with the Oscars ever since. Alan Carr did not like the "and the winner is" when opening the envelopes because he felt that was too mean and too competitive. He ordered the phrase be changed to "and the Oscar goes to," and it's been that way ever since.
feel like winners.
Exactly. Alan Carr thought that was a more friendly saying, and he felt he didn't want the Oscars to be seen as just like a cutthroat competition of who's better than everyone else, but rather who just was the best of that category, and not like as if that automatically makes them better, which is why he felt "and the winner is" was a mean phrase to say.
Well, that just about does it for our overall discussion on the Oscars going into tomorrow night. So, to everyone making their predictions, good luck to you all, and good luck to you, Alex.
And same to you.
Mhm. And so, hopefully, at least someone will do the best they can with their predictions. So, we'll see you later.